Hello and welcome to the Pokemon Zoology podcast number 11. It feels like the time is just flying by. If you are new to this, my name is Joshua Dunlop. I am a concept artist from London and I created the Pokemon Zoology series where I take Pokemon and make them look like they're realistic creatures. If you're coming back, thank you very much. It's lovely to see you again. And if you are new, please go back and listen through just so that you can catch up and listen to a few of the kind of the descriptions of what like my process is and kind of what I've been doing lately. So the first thing that I want to talk about quickly is I'm thinking about starting a new series. This has come from basically the fact that I can't do Pokemon for the rest of my life. It's just not feasible. So I have thought about doing a series with realistic mythological creatures or fantasy creatures or something along those lines. I've done a few so far. So I've done some like fairies and I've done like a ghost and I did a chupacabra, which actually went down really, really well. One of the things that I noticed is that when I put artwork up on my Instagram, for example, and it's not Pokemon, they still do quite well. You know, I'm still hitting like a good couple of thousand, usually like 4,000 to 5,000 likes on those ones. Pokemon, obviously, and quite understandably, is a lot higher, so we're kind of looking more between 80 and 20,000 kind of thing. But the Chupacabra actually got around 18,000 likes, which is fantastic. And it does kind of make me think, okay, well, maybe I can kind of branch away from Pokemon. It doesn't mean that I'm going to give it up completely. I might end up coming back to it and doing some bits and pieces, but you know, the end is in sight. I have about 29 left, I think, about 29. So yeah, I have to kind of think about what my next step is and what I'm going to do. Also, I kind of want to create something that is my own IP. I love Pokemon. I love doing fan art of it, but it's not mine. You know, there's a ceiling to it. So I'd love to be able to do something different, something new, and something that's my own. So let me know in the comments below and just kind of let me know if you think it's something that you'd be interested in. I might do like a monster manual or something along those lines. So yeah, check them out and hopefully you like them and I'll do a lot more. So the Pokemon that we're looking at today are the ones that I've done, you know, this month is first of all, I did a starters size comparison. So just to kind of like catch you up, is basically I did remakes of my starter Pokemon along with like, you know, so it was Charmander, Charmeleon, Charizard, etc, etc. One of the things that people really liked was that I did these size comparisons of the final evolutions, and I wanted to show off, you know, that was to kind of show off the size next to a human being. But then a lot of people were going, well, how big are they next to each other? So I thought, okay, well, I'll put them all in one image. So I did, and surprisingly, everyone really, really liked it. One of the things that I'd say is a lot of people were kind of a bit confused about Blastoise. They were saying that they thought it was big, it should be bigger. Personally, I don't think so. Like the way that I was imagining it was more along the lines of like, okay, are they big enough for someone to ride without crushing them? And do they feel like they could handle themselves against the other ones in terms of size? Because you don't, considering that they're all starter Pokemon, you don't really want one of them being considerably larger than any of the others. So I've kind of based it on that and kind of kept it kind of like in a happy median. So yeah, I mean, like, so that there's not really much to say on that one because obviously it's just a compilation picture, but I really liked it and I thought it turned out really, really well. So the next one we have today is Hypno. This one, you know, I did on, as everyone knows, that with a lot of my social media, I put these tiny little stories that go with it. If you are a Patreon supporter, you get a much richer, longer story. And with Hypno one, I recommend going and checking that out. But yeah, in terms of doing Hypno, while I was developing it, obviously I was kind of keeping Drowsy in mind when I was doing it. I did sculpt this from scratch. It wasn't kind of like a build on top of anything. But one of the things that I kind of tried to kind of keep was the sort of tapir trunk. In terms of like Drowsy, you know, it's got this longer trunk, very similar to a tapir, but then when it evolves into Hypno, its nose kind of looks like a long human nose. I don't know whether or not that's got some sort of like mythology behind it, where they've pulled the concept of Hypno from. I should probably research that. But because I knew that it was evolving from Drowsy, I really wanted to kind of have its nose feel like it's still part of the same animal, if that makes sense, rather than it be like a completely different thing. So I decided to put these kind of like pattern lines that go down from its eyes, kind of like how cheetahs have, and kind of give it the impression that it has this weird nose when actually it's not. It's more just like pattern based. Some people may like that, some people really might hate it, I don't know, but it was just my interpretation of it because I wanted it to feel like a real animal. And you know, I wanted to keep its tapir roots in there as well. I actually quite enjoyed creating this one. It wasn't really that difficult. It was quite simple in terms of like the structure. In terms of like it like naturally evolving and stuff, it was a little bit strange because obviously it's kind of got like more like ape-like features or humanoid-like features compared to Drowsy. So that was a little bit trickier, but at the end of the day, you know, I kind of have to pull from source material, and I do change things once in a while, but I don't change things dramatically. So one of the fun things that I got to do with this picture was to do a lot of cool psychic effects, because I wanted to have this idea that the person who was looking at it was getting hypnotized. So I kind of had these really cool, something that I've brought in on a lot of psychic type Pokemon is these kind of like rainbowy light distortion kind of effects. And yeah, I just think it turned out really, really well. So the next Pokemon we're going to talk about is Pidgeot. This one I was not looking forward to. Quite frankly, the three that I put up for the vote, which was Pidgeot, Dodrio, and Fearow, are some of the ones that I was dreading doing. I hate feathers. I've said it countless times on this podcast. I hate doing feathers. It is so time consuming. It's really hard to make look realistic and not like plasticky or like hard. But, you know, this one I think turned out really well. Like surprisingly well. I really wanted to try and get this element of majesty with Pidgeot. So I pulled from a few different sources. I looked at golden eagles, I looked at fishing eagles, I looked at kestrels and peregrine falcons. So there were a few things. One of the things that I will highlight, and it was actually an artist friend of mine, RJ Palmer. He also does some fantastic realistic Pokemon, so you should check him out. I think he also goes by Arvalis. But yeah, he did make a point and said that the feathers, the way that I kind of laid up the feathers, were slightly off, and it's something that is quite common that a lot of artists do, and especially people who don't have a huge amount of experience with feathers or birds and stuff like that. And I hold my hands up, like, you know, I'm not perfect. You know, everyone kind of looks at me and go, well, you must be some sort of like biologist or zoologist or something. And I'm like, no, I'm just an artist who has a passion for creatures and animals and stuff like that. So occasionally I get things a little bit wrong, but it didn't damage the thing. The main problem was that the feathers just overlap incorrectly, which didn't damage the overall aesthetic of the image. And I think you'd only notice it if you knew that about feathers and stuff like that. So it's not the end of the world. In terms of like the lighting and the composition and the background and stuff, I'm really, really happy with how it turned out. I think I got some really good angles and stuff. I actually tried out quite a few different angles and shared it with my Patreon supporters and kind of asked everyone, like, you know, which one do you think feels like the best? And to be honest, it was such a mixed review that I ended up just kind of having to go with my gut, and luckily everyone really liked that and people agreed with me. But yeah, I think the overall feel of it, I really want to get this kind of element of majesty and freedom and power behind it. I actually had someone say to me going like, oh, the head looks a bit small. And I was like, actually, I made the head about 4 times larger than it's supposed to be. If you look at real eagles and stuff like that, the wingspan is enormous compared to, you know, what's actually on the body. I had to make that adjustment because of the original designs, and Pidgeot has a much bigger body, a much smaller wings, but I think I pulled it off. I feel like I got the overall aesthetic right, and people really loved it, so that was great. So yeah, very, very happy with that one. The last one I'm going to talk about today is Pidgeot again, basically, and I did exactly what I did with the starter Pokemon. Originally, I wasn't going to do it. A lot of people kept asking me, like, when I put out the Pidgeot picture, like, can you please do, like, a size comparison? Really love the size comparison. I wasn't expecting that at all. I don't think people would latch onto it as much as they did. But I changed the position, so I made it facing the camera, which was something that a lot of the Patreon supporters really wanted to see. I felt like in the initial picture, I didn't want to do that because I felt like it threw the silhouette off a little bit. But this one, I had far more freedom with, and I decided to have it facing the camera. I think it looked a lot more menacing and powerful and stuff, especially when I had the woman next to her. I keep saying this, I really liked how this turned out, but I really did. I think the lighting looked great, I think the position looked wonderful, and I think it really showed off the size. One of the things that I found on my social media was that a lot of people were asking me about, like, you know, that's too big, or that's not big enough, or whatnot, like, because I think some people come from it from an angle of, does this look cool? Can you look like you could ride it? That kind of stuff. And that's kind of where I was coming from. Whereas some people were going like, you know, scientifically, there's no way that this creature could pick up something this large and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, probably, you know. And I know that I'm going for a realistic take with these Pokemon, and there are certain times where a lot of the time Pokemon just completely ignores physics, and it's really annoying, and especially with the sizes and stuff, it's still a fantasy world. That's what you have to kind of come down to. It's like, yes, I'm making a more realistic version, but it's still a fantasy world, and some things you have to take with a pinch of salt. So in terms of it not physically being able to actually lift her, like, okay, fine, but this one can in this world. So you just kind of have to take it like that, really. But yeah, this month's pictures I was really happy with, and you know, a lot of people really enjoyed it. As I said before, if you're not a Patreon supporter, please check it out. I'm not saying that you have to support me, but if you did, it would mean the world. Big shout out to my current Patreon supporters. Like, honestly, it's amazing that you would choose to try and help me and support me. And it is the lifeblood of this project. You know, I don't think I could actually make a living if I didn't have that help. So thank you. Moving on, it's moving on to the Q&A section of the podcast. The first one comes from Catherine Lant, and she says, who was your biggest influence as an artist? Obviously, I have lots of influences in terms of like my style and what I'm doing and all this kind of stuff. Like, I pull from a lot of different places. I have some incredible friends who are professional artists, and you know, I can talk freely to them and bounce ideas off them and vice versa. So that is wonderful, and I'm not going to do any like personal shout outs specifically on artists because I don't feel like it's fair on if anyone gets left out. When it really comes down to it, I think my inspiration goes right back to when I was a little kid, and my aunt bought me a book called Dinotopia, which is by an artist named James Gurney. I can't recommend that book or the series of books enough. It is just stunning. The artwork is gorgeous, reminiscent of, you know, the great artists of old, and yet still it feels so real. Like, just to give you a context of what Dinotopia is, it's basically a story set, I believe, in like the 18th century or something like that, where a father and a son get shipwrecked on an island and discover the island is populated not only by people but by dinosaurs and a variety of different prehistoric creatures, and they live side by side. They live together. The dinosaurs are intelligent and can communicate with the humans in different ways. They have their own language, and they communicate with different alphabets and all sorts of stuff. And it's just the world building is gorgeous, like absolutely gorgeous. And for me, that was, you know, when I was a kid, I look back at it and I think that was where it started. That's where my love of world building, my love of creating art and bringing my imagination onto a page all came from, because it was kind of the first time that someone demonstrated and go, oh, you can do this as a job, you know, This is you don't like you scribbling on a piece of paper on the floor watching cartoons can become something. That was so inspirational to me, and a huge thank you to my auntie Claudia who bought it for me. But James Gurney's work has been a constant inspiration to me. I actually have all of the books signed, except for Journey to Chandara, which I still need to get a signed copy of. It's very difficult though, because I live in the UK and they only ship to Canada and the US, so that's a shame. God, if I could meet him or talk to him one day, that would just be insane. So if anyone knows James Gurney, let them know that I absolutely adore his work and I would love to say thank you. So yeah, so that's, where a lot of my inspiration came from, just in general, for my life and my art. Yeah, so let's move on to the next question. Next question comes from Punch Up Princess 88. That was a mouthful. Thank you for submitting this question. And they ask, what is it about Pokemon that you love so much? Obviously, there is a huge amount of nostalgia that comes from Pokemon. I think Pokemon originally came out when I was like, I don't know, I think I was at 10 or something like that. I can't even remember. And again, it's the concept of world building that I fell in love with. It captured my imagination. It's, like in many interviews, the creators of Pokemon talk about like what they did and why they created it, and that it came from a love of collecting, insect collecting, I believe, was, or bug catching or whatever it was that they loved when they were kids, and this kind of like idea of having companions that you raise and train and explore this amazing world. It's just all of that kind of stuff, and and attaching superpowers to like creatures and monsters was something really new to me. Like obviously I loved comics and everything like that growing up, and it was really, really cool, but it was something new that I'd never seen before, and I think it's always stuck in me, and people seem to love it, so that's fantastic. So I just want to quickly shout out my Patreon supporters. So we've got Francisco, Nikki Wolf, Jamie Dunbar, and Elvis Ditto as well. So thank you, each and every one of you, like genuinely, it means the world. You are all legends. And as I said before, please go and check out my Patreon if you haven't already. So thank you again for listening, and do check out everything. Check out my Etsy. I need to update it soon. I know a lot of people keep arguing that they're like, oh no, you haven't got any of your new ones on there. And trust me, I know. The biggest problem with that is that the majority of my sales is through, going to Comic-Cons and stuff like that. And, I make my money back. I make the costs of the prints back through that. In this time where I can't go to Comic-Cons, buying a load of prints with just kind of fingers crossed that people will buy them is quite financially risky for me at the moment. So I'm holding off on that. But there are still loads of my old prints available on there. Do check it out. But thank you to everyone for listening, and I'll check you out next month. Thanks. Bye.